never turn your back on a Breen. This Romulan proverb reveals everything you need to know about their worldview. Trust no one, expect betrayal, and always have a contingency plan. The Romulans, secretive, cunning, and devoted to the supremacy of their star empire. They're the road not taken, the dark mirror of Vulcan logic, showing what happens when passion refuses to be suppressed. Today, we're exploring the complete history of the Romulan people, from their violent rejection of Surak's teachings and exodus from Vulcan, through centuries of isolation and conflict, to the supernova that destroyed their homeworld and scattered them across the stars. This is the story of a civilization built on secrets and strength, of warriors who chose honor without logic, and of an empire that refused to bend until the universe itself broke them. Our story begins not on Romulus, but on Vulcan during the time of awakening. Around 370 AD by Earth's calendar, the philosopher Surak began teaching that emotions must be mastered through logic, or the Vulcan people would destroy themselves. His followers transformed Vulcan society, but not everyone accepted his message. A faction arose, known as those who march beneath the raptor's wings. They rejected Surak's philosophy entirely. To them, emotion, particularly passion, honor, and the willingness to fight, was not weakness, but the essence of what made life worth living. Logic without passion was a living death. The conflict escalated into open warfare. Nuclear weapons scarred Vulcan's deserts. Telepaths battled for control. As the wars raged, it became clear that one side would have to leave or be destroyed. The Raptor faction lost. Rather than submit to Surak's teachings, they made a choice that would echo through galactic history. They left. In massive generation ships, tens of thousands, possibly millions of Vulcan dissidents departed their homeworld forever. The journey was brutal. Some ships were lost to space. Others settled on various worlds. But the main fleet continued searching, seeking their own promised land. They found twin planets orbiting a star in the Beta Quadrant, far from Vulcan. They named them Romulus and Remus, and on these worlds, the exiles began to build. They brought the martial prowess, telepathic abilities, and fierce pride of ancient Vulcan. They would create something entirely their own, the Romulan Star Empire. The early centuries of Romulan history are shrouded in mystery, deliberately so. The Romulans developed cultural paranoia. Perhaps being refugees created a mindset where trust was dangerous and information was power. They constructed a society where secrecy was fundamental to survival. Romulan homes reflected this. Every traditional dwelling has a false front door. The real entrance is in the back. The logic is chilling. Victims enter through the front, while allies use the back entrance. Everyone was watching everyone else, and betrayal was always one step away. The government was complex and Byzantine, with multiple competing power structures, preventing any single faction from gaining absolute control. At the top sat a largely ceremonial emperor or empress. Real power rested with the praetor, who presided over the imperial senate and commanded the military. The senate was composed of representatives from noble houses and governors. Beneath the praetor were the proconsul and vice proconsul, managing daily government affairs. But the true power was the Tal Shiar. The Tal Shiar was the secret police and intelligence service. They reported only to the highest government levels, but often operated independently. Their authority superseded military commanders. They maintained their own fleet. They could arrest, disappear, or execute anyone suspected of disloyalty. The Tal Shiar didn't just investigate crimes, they created constant surveillance. Agents mingled in crowds. Political officers monitored crews. Speaking against the Empire could result in disappearing in the night, never to be seen again. This was the foundation. A militaristic society obsessed with security, where every citizen served the state's glory, where honor meant loyalty above all else, and where showing weakness could be fatal. By the mid-22nd century, the Romulans had established significant Beta Quadrant territory. They had conquered other species, including the Remans, whom they used as slave labor and shock troops. Then they encountered humanity. In the early 2150s, the Romulans watched with alarm as Earth made impressive diplomatic advances. Captain Jonathan Archer and the Enterprise NX-0. One had brokered peace between Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites, three powers that had been enemies for generations. These species were discussing forming a coalition of planets, a unified alliance that could challenge Romulan expansion. The Romulans couldn't allow this, so they launched the Babel Crisis, working with a rogue Vulcan administrator. Romulan agents deployed telepresence-operated drone ships that could disguise themselves as vessels from any species. These drones attacked ships while appearing to be each other's vessels, attempting to reignite ancient conflicts. The plot failed. Captain Archer exposed the deception. The four powers came together in 2155 to establish their coalition of planets. The Romulans had pushed them closer together instead of driving them apart. The result was war. In 2156, open conflict erupted. The Earth-Romulan War lasted 4 brutal years, fought entirely over subspace radio without visual communication. No human, Vulcan, Andorian, or Tellarite ever saw a Romulan face during the conflict. The war was savage. Ships fought with atomic weapons. Quarter was neither asked nor given. The Romulans attacked Denobula in 2158, killing 3 million civilians in orbital strikes. The Battle of Charon in 2160 was decisive. A coalition fleet of 128 ships achieved total victory, destroying Romulan shipyards. The Treaty of Algerin established the Romulan neutral zone, a buffer region neither side would cross. The treaty was negotiated entirely over audio, and then, for over a century, the Romulans vanished from galactic affairs. After the war, the Romulan Star Empire withdrew completely behind the neutral zone. For 106 years, there was no contact. The Romulans became a ghost story, a cautionary tale about an enemy whose faces had never been seen. During this period, the coalition transformed into the United Federation of Planets in 2161. The Federation expanded dramatically, but always the question remained: what were the Romulans doing? The silence broke in 2266 when Starfleet detected the destruction of Federation outposts along the neutral zone. The USS Enterprise, under Captain Kirk, was dispatched to investigate. They found a Romulan bird of prey equipped with a cloaking device, capable of complete invisibility. When the vessel was forced to decloak, the Enterprise crew saw Romulans for the first time. The shock was immediate. Romulans looked like Vulcans. Pointed ears, arched eyebrows, the same physiology. The connection was undeniable. This encounter established the pattern for the next century. Cautious engagement, punctuated by conflict, mutual respect, mixed with deep distrust. Around 2268, the impossible happened. The Romulan Star Empire and Klingon Empire formed an alliance. Two warrior cultures found common cause opposing the Federation. The Klingons provided ships, including D-7 battle cruisers. The Romulans shared cloaking technology. For nearly 25 years, this alliance held, but by 2293, the alliance had collapsed. When Chancellor Gorkon pursued peace with the Federation, a Romulan ambassador was implicated in the conspiracy to assassinate him. The plot failed, the Khitomer Accords were signed, and the Romulans found themselves isolated. An incident in 2311, the Tomed Incident, killed thousands and led to treaty renegotiation. The Federation was now prohibited from developing cloaking devices, revealing their concern about another war. After Tomed, the Romulans again withdrew. Relations remained cold and hostile, but isolation would no longer be viable. By the 24th century, the Romulan Star Empire had evolved, but remained fundamentally the same. Secretive, aggressive, and convinced of their superiority, the Romulans now commanded massive Deuteridex-class warbirds, some of the largest ships in known space, capable of cloaking while maintaining weapons readiness. In 2344, they attacked the Klingon outpost at Narendra III. The USS Enterprise C defended the outpost at the cost of the ship and most of its crew. This sacrifice strengthened the Klingon Federation alliance, the opposite of what Romulans intended. Throughout the 2360s and 2370s, the Romulans engaged in Cold War with the Federation. They maintained spy installations. They supported dissidents within the Klingon Empire, backing the House of Duras in the Klingon Civil War, attempting to install a puppet government. The Tal Shiar reached the height of their power during this period, operating with virtual impunity. Meanwhile, Ambassador Spock traveled covertly to Romulus in 2368, working with underground groups seeking reunification with Vulcans. The government tried to exploit this for invasion, but Captain Picard exposed the plot. Spock continued his work, believing that eventually reason would triumph and the two peoples would reunite. In 2371, the Romulan Star Empire faced a new threat: the Dominion from the Gamma Quadrant. The Tal Shiar and their Cardassian counterparts, the Obsidian Order, decided on a preemptive strike. A joint task force of 20 ships crossed through the Bajoran wormhole in October 2371 to attack the Founders' homeworld. It was a trap. The Dominion had evacuated the homeworld. Hidden Jem'Hadar ships emerged and annihilated the entire strike force. Not a single ship escaped. The two most powerful intelligence agencies in the quadrant had been gutted in a single afternoon. Initially, the Romulans signed a non-aggression pact with the Dominion. But in 2374, Captain Sisko and the spy Garak manufactured evidence that the Dominion planned to invade Romulan space. They assassinated Senator Vreenak and arranged for the evidence to be discovered, making it appear the Dominion had killed him. The deception worked. The Romulan Star Empire entered the war alongside the Federation and Klingon Empire. The Romulan entry tipped the balance of power. With 3 fleets united, the Allies went on the offensive. In late 2374, they captured the Chintoka system in a costly but decisive battle. The Romulans fought on their own front, as well brutal ground combat, where Romulan and Reman troops fought entrenched Jem'Hadar forces. The Remans, enslaved for centuries, bore the brunt of the worst fighting. In 2375, the Breen entered the war on the Dominion's side with an energy-dampening weapon. The Second Battle of Chintoka was a massacre of 312 Allied ships. All but one were destroyed. Eventually, the Cardassians rebelled against the Dominion. The final battle took place at Cardassia Prime. When Odo convinced the female changeling the war was lost, she ordered surrender. The Dominion war was over. But the cost had been staggering. The Romulans had lost entire fleets. They withdrew again, focusing on rebuilding. Relations with the Federation declined, and old patterns of suspicion reasserted themselves. The cracks were beginning to show. In 2379, disaster struck. Praetor Hiern and the entire Senate were assassinated in a Thalaran radiation attack. The deaths were orchestrated by Shinzon, a clone of Captain Picard created years earlier and abandoned to die in the Remus mines. With help from military officers, Shinzon staged a coup, seizing control and declaring himself Praetor. He planned to use a Thalaran weapon to commit genocide against Earth itself. Captain Picard stopped Shinzon, but at tremendous cost. The Empire was left in chaos. Senator Talora emerged as the new Praetor, but various factions vied for power. The Tal Shiar struggled to maintain control, and then the universe itself turned against them. In 2387, the Romulan Star went supernova. This wasn't natural. Something had destabilized the star, threatening to destroy Romulus, Remus, and surrounding systems. Ambassador Spock volunteered to use red matter, a substance capable of creating black holes, to contain the supernova. He piloted a Vulcan ship into the explosion. He arrived too late. Romulus was destroyed. Remus was destroyed. Billions died in moments. The capital, the government, the military infrastructure, the cultural heart of a 2,000-year-old civilization, all gone. Spock contained the supernova, preventing further destruction. But both his ship and a Romulan mining vessel were pulled into the black hole, sending them back in time to different eras. In the prime timeline, the Romulan Star Empire collapsed. Survivors scattered. Some formed the Romulan Free State. Others became refugees. The Federation organized a massive rescue operation led by Admiral Picard. But political opposition and a catastrophic attack on Mars ended the evacuation prematurely. Picard resigned in protest. The once mighty Romulan Star Empire was gone. In the centuries following the supernova, scattered Romulans struggled to rebuild, but something else was happening. Slowly, carefully, Vulcans and Romulans began finding common ground. The barriers erected 2,000 years earlier began to crumble. By the 32nd century, over 900 years after the supernova, Spock's dream of reunification came true. Vulcans and Romulans came together, and their unified homeworld was renamed Nivar, meaning to form, when the burn destroyed most dilithium in 3069, causing warp drives to explode. The Federation shattered. Nivar withdrew, choosing isolationism. When the USS Discovery arrived from the past in 3189, they found a diminished Federation. Nivar's government was divided. Ironically, Romulan factions favored remaining in the Federation, while many Vulcans advocated isolationism, a complete reversal of historical positions. Eventually, Nivar was convinced to rejoin the Federation. But the fact that they had withdrawn suggested that neither logic nor passion alone provides perfect answers. So what is the legacy of the Romulans. They were a people who chose passion over logic, honor without reason, and strength through cunning. They built an empire that lasted 2 millennia, challenged the Federation, and survived wars that destroyed other civilizations. They proved that emotion, properly channeled, could be as powerful as Vulcan logic, but they also showed the cost. Their culture of secrecy created paranoia. Their martial honor led to unwinnable wars. Their refusal to trust left them isolated when catastrophe struck. When their son died, they had burned too many bridges to receive the help they needed. The Romulans were never villains, despite their role. They were survivors, refugees who built something magnificent from exile. They were warriors who valued honor. They were strategists thinking in centuries, while others thought in years. And in the end, they found their way home not to Romulus, which burned, but to Vulcan, where their ancestors lived before Surak drove them away. Logic and passion, Vulcan and Romulan, finally reunited on Nivar. Perhaps that's the real lesson. Neither path alone is sufficient. The Vulcans needed to remember how to feel. The Romulans needed to learn when to think. And only together, embracing infinite diversity in infinite combinations, could they truly thrive. The raptor still flies, but now it flies alongside the IDIC, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Never turn your back on a Breen, but maybe, just maybe, you can trust a cousin.